The Treaty of Versailles was the treaty that effectively ended World War I, which was signed about 6 months after the armistice was signed. It put an end to the world's most harrowing and deadly conflict up until that time. World War I was the cause of the Treaty of Versailles. At first, many armies still clung to their traditional grandiose uniforms, but as the war dragged on, these fell to more economically available, simple uniforms. World War I will long be remembered as the War of the Trenches, and this is true. In 2 years, neither side gained or lost more than 10 miles. Commanders at the time thought that the best way to deal with this was by blowing up the enemy lines with large caliber guns, and right before an attack bombard the enemy with millions of shells. Many new technologies were introduced in World War I, such as the widespread use of air power. Another major advancement was the invention of the tank, although these relatively new technologies did not always work correctly. The making of the Treaty of Versailles. Following World War I, much of Europe lay in ruins. This angered the Europeans, and they wanted revenge on who they felt was responsible, which they thought was Germany. The three most important politicians at the Versailles Conference were Woodrow Wilson, Lloyd George, and George Clemenceau. These big three each had different opinions on how to punish Germany. As each had to please their own country, there were conflicts on what to impose on Germany. Woodrow Wilson of America had been genuinely stunned by the savagery of the Great War. He could not understand how an advanced civilization could have reduced itself so that it created so much devastation. In America, there was a growing desire for the government to adopt a policy of isolation and leave Europe to its own devices. In failing health, Wilson wanted America to concentrate on itself and, despite developing the idea of the League of Nations, he wanted American input to be kept to a minimum. He believed that Germany should be punished in a way that would lead to European reconciliation, as opposed to revenge. He had already written about what he believed the world should be like in his 14 points. The main points in this document were: no more secret treaties, countries must seek to reduce their weapons and their armed forces, national self-determination should allow people of the same nationality to govern themselves, and one nationality should not have the power to govern another. All countries should belong to the League of Nations. David Lloyd George of Great Britain had two views on how Germany should be treated. His public image was simple. He was a politician, and politicians needed the support of the public to succeed in elections. If he had come across as being soft on Germany, he would have been speedily voted out of office. The British public was after revenge, and Lloyd George's public image reflected this mood. Hang the Kaiser and make Germany pay were two very common calls in the era immediately after the end of the war, and Lloyd George, looking for public support, echoed these views. However, in private, Lloyd George was also very concerned with the rise of communism in Russia, and he feared that it might spread to Western Europe. After the war had finished, Lloyd George believed that the spread of communism posed a far greater threat to the world than a defeated Germany. Georges Clemenceau of France had one very simple belief: Germany should be brought to its knees so that she could never start war again. This reflected the views of the French people, but it was also what Clemenceau himself believed in. He had seen the northeast corner of France destroyed, and he was determined that Germany should never be allowed to do this again. The Tiger did not have to adapt his policies to suit the French public. The French leader and the public thought the same. After debating for 6 months, the delegates finally came to a compromise on what to do with Germany. The terms of the Treaty of Versailles. The basic terms of the Treaty of Versailles can be summed up by Brat. 1. Germany had to accept the blame for starting the war. 2. Germany had to pay £6,600 million for the damage done during the war. Forbidden to have submarines or an air force. She could have a navy of only 6 battleships and an army of just 100,000 men. In addition, Germany was not allowed to place any troops in the Rhineland, a strip of land 50 miles wide. 4. Germany lost territory in Europe. Germany's colonies were all given to Britain and France.